Welcome to Lifelens TV, your #1 source for breaking news, insightful opinions, and deep dives into the stories that truly matter. My name is Jennifer Harrison, and the person bringing you this story is Peter Tosh Williams. Today we're discussing a bombshell development that has sent waves across Kenya, the shocking news about Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, or JKIA as we all know it. For the past several months, rumours were swirling that JKIA, the crown jewel of Kenya's aviation sector, was being sold. The rumour that triggered the Gen Z to almost occupy the airport. People were left wondering, how could this happen? Were the airport facilities being handed over to foreign interests without public consultation? Panic spread like wildfire, with social media and news outlets jumping on the bandwagon, claiming that the country's largest airport was gone for good. But before the story could settle, Nelson Amenya, a patriotic Kenyan and student, dropped a bombshell. He wasn't a government spokesperson, but he became a whistleblower, revealing the first document from Adani Airport Holdings Limited. Amenya's leak set off a chain reaction, raising eyebrows and sparking even more debate about the true nature of the deal. His revelation showed that there was indeed something happening behind the scenes, an agreement that wasn't being fully disclosed to the public. Then, just as the dust was beginning to settle, the second document came directly from the office of the president, presented by the official Kenyan government spokesperson, Isaac Mwaura. This document aimed to clarify the government's stance on the proposed public-private partnership with Adani. But instead of quieting the rumours, it only added fuel to the fire, leaving Kenyans wondering what the real truth behind the deal was. That foreign entity? Adani Airport Holdings Limited, a company based in India, known for managing airport infrastructures. But was this really in the best interest of Kenyans? This bombshell statement triggered more questions than answers, and it seemed like the entire country was holding its breath, waiting to see the documents, waiting to understand the truth. So, what do these documents say? Well, let me tell you, we've got our hands on the proposal document from Adani itself and the government's official response. And the details are eye-opening. The first document we're going to look at is the proposal from Adani Airport Holdings. Here's what the document reads. Adani Airport Holdings Limited, 1st March 2024, Chief Executive Officer, Kenya Airports Authority, Jomo Kenyatta. International Airport, JKIA, Nairobi, Kenya subject, privately initiated proposal for the development of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport through public-private partnership arrangement. Dear Sir Madam, we, Adani Airport Holdings Limited, an established airport infrastructure company based in India, are pleased to submit our privately initiated proposal, PIP, to develop and expand the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA. Our PIP is submitted to you in accordance with the Public-Private Partnerships Act, 2021, and we acknowledge your mandate as the contracting authority in Kenya overseeing the development and management of the nation's aviation infrastructure. Our enclosed PIP is a detailed compilation of the proposed project, providing the underlying financial and technical feasibility analyses. This includes the assessment of key technical aspects crucial to airport development, market conditions, and financial strategy. While our PIP outlines a bold financial strategy, we acknowledge that there are risks and challenges involved. However, we remain committed to adhering to public and private interests and providing a development plan that meets international standards of infrastructure. Should you require any clarification on the contents of our PIP, please do not hesitate to contact us. Yours faithfully, Alok Patni Authorised Signatory, Adani Airport Holdings Limited. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this document is a proposal from Adani Airport Holdings Limited to develop and expand Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA, under a public-private partnership, PPP model. Adani, a company from India, wants to take over the management and development of JKIA by presenting a privately initiated proposal. They acknowledge the risks but seem confident in their financial and technical approach to airport management. This proposal clearly lays out the terms under which Adani would take over the expansion and management of JKIA. As you can see, Adani is pushing for a PPP model where they would use their own financial and technical expertise to expand the airport's capacity. Now, On the surface, this might seem like a positive development. After all, expanding JKIA could make it one of the leading airports in Africa. But let's be real here. When you're handing over such a critical piece of infrastructure to a foreign company, it's not just about expanding capacity. It's about control, oversight, and most importantly, ownership. And that's where the controversy really heats up. This isn't just a construction project. This is the gateway to Kenya, an asset that every Kenyan has a stake in. When foreign corporations get involved, the question becomes, who benefits? The public or private interests? Now, fellow patriots, in my personal opinion as Jennifer Harrison, I think this is a clear case where public interest should be the top priority. When public property, such as a national airport, is proposed for development by a foreign private entity, the people must be involved. After all, this airport doesn't belong to any individual or government figure, it belongs to Kenyans. It's crucial for the public to have a voice in such deals, especially when concerns arise about the sovereignty of Kenyan assets. If the president or any government official tries to push such a deal without involving the citizens, it signals that there's more happening behind the scenes. Transparency is key here. As you continue watching, please consider subscribing. Thank you. Now, before we dive into the government's response, let me give you a bit of context on public-private partnerships, PPPs, and why they've become such a hot topic in Kenya. A PPP is essentially a collaboration between a government and a private company, where the private company takes on certain responsibilities. In this case, the financing, development, and management of a project. But here's the kicker. In return, the private company often gains certain control over the asset, sometimes even for decades. This type of arrangement can work well when done right, but in many cases, it's the citizens who lose out. There have been instances across the world where PPPs have led to price hikes, reduced services, and a lack of public accountability. So the concerns Kenyans have are valid. What happens to our airport fees? Will it become more expensive for ordinary Kenyans to fly? Will services improve or degrade? These are questions that need answers. Now, let's turn to the government's official response. Here's the document that the government released, addressing the need for expansion and why they believe a PPP is the best solution. It reads, Executive Office of the President Chief of Staff, Head of the Public Service Office of the Government Spokesperson, 11 September 2024. Adani-JKIA Explainer, the need to expand JKIA. Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA, urgently requires expansion to accommodate the anticipated rise in passenger and cargo traffic. Currently, JKIA handles 8.6 million passengers annually, which exceeds its design capacity of 7.5 million. By 2054, this number is expected to reach 32 million passengers, along with nearly 1 million tons of cargo, compared to 367,000 tons in 2023. The existing infrastructure has surpassed its capacity and cannot support this projected growth. Numerous incidents have highlighted the need to upgrade the airport. These include leaking roofs that have caused significant embarrassment and power outages that have disrupted operations. JKIA is also plagued by inadequate aircraft parking bays, outdated passenger terminals, and baggage handling systems, all of which result in inefficiency. Limited shopping and dining options inhibit the ability of KAA to fully exploit the airport's commercial potential. As a key pillar of Kenya's regional commercial and logistics hub status, JKIA plays a vital role in the country's economic development and connectivity. Expanding the airport is crucial for sustaining economic growth, tourism and trade, aligning with the National Development Plan. It will enable Kenya to better compete with other regional airports that have recently upgraded, including those in Rwanda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. The proposed expansion, estimated to cost $2 billion, 260 billion Kenya shillings, cannot be funded solely by the government of Kenya due to fiscal constraints. To preserve JKIA's strategic role while addressing budgetary limitations, the government has adopted a public-private partnership (PPP) as the most viable financing model. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was a response from the Office of the President through the government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura. This document from the government explains why JKIA needs expansion and why they decided to engage in a public-private partnership, PPP, with Adani Airport Holdings. It emphasises the anticipated rise in passenger traffic and cargo, mentioning the current shortcomings of JKIA's infrastructure, such as leaking roofs, power outages, and inefficiency in operations. The government stresses that they cannot afford the $2 billion required for the project, which is why they believe a PPP is the best option. The government argues that JKIA is in desperate need of expansion. They talk about the projected growth in passenger numbers, from 8.6 million to over 32 million in just a few decades, and the rising demand for cargo capacity. They point to current infrastructure problems, leaking roofs, outdated systems, power outages, and say that JKIA simply cannot continue operating efficiently without a major overhaul. But, as the government admits, they don't have the $2 billion needed to finance this expansion, and that's where Adani comes in. The government sees the PPP with Adani as the best solution to address these challenges without draining Kenya's already limited financial resources. So, on the surface, it seems logical, right? The government has no money, a private company steps in to help, and we get a bigger, better airport. But here's where I offer my take. While the need for expansion is clear and supported by factual statistics, the decision to engage in a public-private partnership with a foreign entity like Adani should not bypass public scrutiny. The government must remember that Kenyans have a vested interest in the ownership and management of national assets like JKIA. Before entering into any binding agreements, the government should open the floor to public discourse, ensuring that the voices of the people are heard. A transparent approach would avoid raising suspicions about the president's intentions, as the people deserve to know who will ultimately control their infrastructure. Does a PPP serve Kenya's long-term interests, or is it a short-term fix with long-term consequences? Now, with all these revelations and allegations surrounding the Adani deal, there's certainly a lot to think about. But before we go any further, I'd like to hear from David. David, you've been following this closely. What's your take on all of this? Do you think there's more to this story than what we're being told?
Thanks, Jennifer. You've really laid out the issue well, and it's clear this Adani deal raises a lot of questions. First off, I think we need to ask ourselves why there was such a rush to strike this partnership. The incidents you mentioned, water leaking inside the airport and the power outages, could very well have been used as strategic points to justify this deal. But if you dig deeper, the timing seems suspicious, especially when there's talk of bribes and backdoor dealings involving high-ranking officials like Murkomen. When you have someone like Kimani Ngunjiri accusing Murkomen of flaunting wealth allegedly funded by Adani, it makes you wonder, was this really about upgrading JKIA, or were certain individuals just looking to cash in? Now, Jennifer, just to remind you, sometimes back, there was a video that circulated on social media showing Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA, in a rather embarrassing state. Water was leaking through the ceilings, and it was practically raining inside one of the biggest airports in Africa. As if that wasn't enough, the airport also experienced a power outage that lasted for several hours. This was during the tenure of the current CS for Sports, Kipchumba Murkomen, who was then the CS for Transport and Infrastructure. Now, could this have been part of a strategic plan to paint JKIA as a facility in dire need of repairs or upgrades in order to justify striking a deal with Adani Airport Holdings? In the government's official reports, these incidents were highlighted as reasons why the airport needed to be funded through a public-private partnership, but some are skeptical. There are also allegations that Kipchumba Murkomen may have received bribes from Adani to push this deal forward. Kimani Ngunjiri, a notable figure, even alleged that Murkomen was boasting during an interview on Obina TV Live about his expensive watches, shoes, and other luxury items, claiming that they were all bought with the money he received from Adani. Here's the tape.
Now, I want to tell you the truth about the airport. From the information, reliable information, Murkomen was given $2 billion as a commission. Na hiyo kampani wa India. Hii pesa ndio hiyo ulikuwa nasikia anasema amenunua mshipi ya 500,000, amenunua saa ya 900,000, kiatu sijui ya pesa ngapi, sio pesa ingine, ni pesa hiyo ya airport.
Clearly, you can hear Kimani Ngunjiri, and his words are not baseless. At the end of the day, airports are not just about money or infrastructure. They are symbols of sovereignty. They represent a nation's capacity to handle its own affairs, welcome its guests, and conduct trade on its terms. And when we start involving foreign companies in such critical infrastructure, without a public consultation process, we risk losing more than just operational control. We risk losing the power to make decisions that truly benefit Kenyans. Thank you for that opportunity, Jennifer. And that's all from me for now. Back to you.
Thank you for your insights, David. You've raised some critical points there, and I think that's exactly what we need, asking the tough questions and demanding transparency. There is a reason why Kenyans are up in arms about this. If the president or any government official tries to push such deals without considering the public's concerns, it raises serious red flags. Transparency is non-negotiable in such deals. The people have the right to know who will ultimately control JKIA, what the long-term consequences will be, and most importantly, whether this is truly in Kenya's best interest. Because, David, you see, we've seen this story play out in other countries. Private partnerships start with the promise of improvement, but end with skyrocketing fees, deteriorating services, and public outrage. Kenyans deserve better, and they deserve to know the full scope of what's happening here. So where do we go from here? The truth is, this story is still unfolding. There's no final decision yet, and we at Lifelens TV will keep you updated as more information comes to light. But for now, let's remain vigilant and demand transparency from those in power. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of today's discussion. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Adani-JKIA deal. A special thanks to my co-host David Maurison for his valuable insights.